Welcome back, brothers. It's been a while, and I want to thank everybody out there for riding with me over this last year since I dropped my last video. Of course, as many of you know by now, I used a good portion of that time to finish up my first book, Designing the Unstoppable Black Man, a personal achievement guide for the everyday black man. Be sure to check it out. I'll leave the link as it is available on Amazon.com. And for those who have already picked it up, of course, you know I appreciate your continued support, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Be sure to let myself and everyone else know what you think of it when you can. I did put a lot of attention to detail from the heart into those pages to help us all progress as men. Now, of course, I've been active in the space still and make sure that periodically I get around to support the streams. There's definitely been some interesting conversations going on, but nonetheless, I wanted to make sure I shared a few thoughts as well as we get back into our groove. It's peace and love, and always salute to you, brothers. Now, this topic is really just a brief one on a particular popular discussion. We, of course, know a lot of brothers are exploring the world and making plans to do so. So I just wanted to share a few things along those lines. It won't be anything too technical, just a couple of considerations that I personally keep in mind, and just wanted to, of course, share those with you as well. I organized these into just 5 brief tips when considering traveling. The first one is actually don't neglect domestic and North American travel. Now, America has a variety of facets to it, despite parts of the overall culture being something that a lot of us as brothers have come to despise. But one thing about America is that you know the country that you live in. You know, you're familiar with the laws, and generally everyone speaks English. You'll never have a problem with that traveling in America. But there are a lot of gems all throughout the United States. But sometimes you just have to get far enough away from home to experience different regions and differences that America has to offer. Now, in my travels, and I've done mostly domestic with some international travel to a couple of different countries, and I have a few more that are planned along the way as well abroad. But I've been able to take some road trips, and I've come to enjoy very specific regions throughout the country, like the Pacific Northwest, mostly the Seattle and Portland region, some parts of Northern California as well added, and also New England, and a couple of cities throughout the South that are historical. But yet there's so many other places for me to spend more time and to get to know better, and for you to do the same as well. So one thing I would say to keep in mind is consider some cities that have sizable populations of people from all types of ethnicities and cultures. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that it's an actual substitute from experiencing the culture in the most authentic settings that you would be in, such as actually visiting Colombia or visiting a place like Cuba or going to Russia or the Ukraine. Of course, despite the things that are going over there right now, but you all get the idea, of course. But the thing with the United States, with it being a melting pot, is that you get a chance to experience a lot of different facets of different cultures right here. In addition, don't forget about your neighboring countries like Canada and Mexico, because they can actually supply you with enough of a break from the run-of-the-mill experience that you've actually been seeking. So you got cities like Toronto, you got places like Montreal, which is actually a French-speaking Canadian city. And there's a lot of European influence there as well. I like visiting Montreal, hope to get back over this summer, if not sooner. And also you got Mexico City, for example, among other places throughout the country of Mexico. But these are all options that are close to home, that offer you some international flair, but that also get you far enough away to where you can really feel the difference. The second option would be just to get familiar with geography in general. Now, my little brother, it's funny to call him that now because he's a year and a half younger than me, but that's still my little brother. But he's been living in Guyana in South America since 2004. And when he comes back home, it amazes me how many people still don't understand where he is. They always get his location mixed up with Africa somehow. But this is something that's kind of common with Americans in general because a lot of people in the States can be very lazy about being familiar with other areas, not only throughout the world, but even in their own country. Now, I'm still living here in Buffalo, New York, and people who are in New York City, which is a 7 hour drive away, 6.5, 7 hours, they're known a lot of times to not pay a lot of attention to the rest of the state of New York and just kind of loosely toss up everything else being outside of New York is just upstate with little regard or attention to the regions, the sub-regions, different places that we have to offer, the Adirondacks, Niagara Falls, all of our state parks, other places and other things that make our state unique as well as what makes other states unique. But whether you're staying stateside or going abroad, just know where things are in the world. Get familiar with the differences of various regions beyond just the accents that people have when you travel different places. Familiarize yourself with the weather, the political climate, the social climate. You know, discover a few unique facts about those areas that you're interested in. Basically become a student again, but this time you're doing it for your own personal expansion and perception of the world. Third thing I will say to keep in mind is to have a plan. So it's a really good idea to do your research about what you can do before you actually get there, wherever you are thinking of visiting and what you want to do. In business, it's a common understanding that you might have the best product or service in the world, but if no one knows about it, then you won't make any sales. So similarly, you might drive 6 or 7 states away or fly halfway across the world and find your trip generally underwhelming because of the mismanaged expectation that your mere arrival would somehow magically spell out this automatic gratifying experience. But make sure you put in the work to map out some key things that will make your trip worthwhile. I think a pretty decent rule of thumb is to maybe plan out like one thing that you can do during the day, one thing that you can do during the evening that you can look forward to. Because if you don't have a projected itinerary, it's very easy to end up being a guy who, let's say, goes to Italy for 4 days and 4 nights, and the only cuisine that he consumes is pizza. So planning ahead kind of falls in line with our point of knowing geography as well, because you can actually arrange a trip pretty efficiently by possibly visiting multiple places, within the same country, or like in Europe with the countries being so close together within the same continent. And a lot of times, you can just fly to these places within a country or various countries, just maybe a couple hours away, and get an entirely different experience. And it may not even be that much to do. Or even if you're staying stateside, just making sure that you have a plan to maybe go check out another area that might be a 3 or 4 hour drive away instead of, maybe having to go all the way back home and then planning for another trip. You might be able to kind of do it all in one without even rushing yourself. So just make sure that you have a plan lined up of things you want to see, things you want to do, and certain experiences that you want to have. The other thing I would say that's important is to manage expectations. So my personal advice would be to not look at traveling to a new place, especially a foreign place, to solve any particular problems. What I mean by that is that even if another area, whether it's domestic or abroad, offers a certain social atmosphere that's more aligned with your personality and values, and even if the attitudes and temperament of the people of that place are much more enjoyable than what you've been used to, it doesn't mean that this particular place that you're scoping out owes you any particular experience, or that you should set your mind on the expectation of a certain guaranteed result of anything. It might even be helpful to be prepared for only about like 60% of whatever it is that you have imagined in your mind actually taking place and working out the way that you've idealized it. And if you can still assess it and say, even if only 60% of that stuff worked out, it might still be worth it. That could be a place that you really should go ahead and take a visit to. Because you're going to have things that happen. Flight delays, unfavorable weather could happen. Even when you did your research on the weather, you could run into a banking issue, especially if you're international. You might have a lost or stolen item, tourist traps. All types of unforeseen things are possible monkey wrenches that can kind of get thrown into your plans and kind of offset things. So I think that's also a good reason to not have your heart set on something playing itself out so strongly and so matter of fact, because it can lead to a lot of disappointment. So make the best of your experience, but make sure that you're, of course, exercising the emotional intelligence to find your experience to be advantageous no matter how it goes. And if things go totally according to plan, plus you even get some bonuses and a cherry on top, then of course that's fantastic and you got some great memories for a lifetime. And yet, if let's say a couple of things didn't really work out the way that you wanted them to, you can find a way to transfer those things into something of an equal or even greater value just based on how you perceive things and being able to have the sophistication to be creative and to find the advantage in certain opportunities. So I think it's important to have a plan for multiple options and interests lined up just in case things might take a certain turn that you didn't initially anticipate. And the last thing I would say, just a general rule, is to order your hierarchy of travel interests and destinations. So what I mean by here, or by this rather, is to organize your travel ideas more or less into tiers and levels of importance. So your first tier might be places that you feel like you just gotta go to, right? These are like your must visit places. This is usually because there's at least one major thing that you know would just make the trip worth it, even if you're just taking a chance and rolling the dice, right? Or usually there's going to be like a few different things that pique your interest and that you know would just make a well-rounded experience where you're like, there's so many things I could enjoy about this place that I really just can't go wrong by going there. And a lot of times your body will often tell you how important these places are because you'll feel the enthusiasm and excitement when you think about these places, even when you're just resting in bed. So just as an example, your list of places that you just got to go to, let's just say it's, two places like Tokyo, Japan, and Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, right? So you kind of start making your hierarchy. And then you might have other places that are like, you know what, I feel very strongly about these places too. Not quite as strong, but they're right up under it. It might be like going to Hong Kong or going to Thailand, going to the Philippines, just ideas that I'm just putting out there. And then you might have other places where it's like, you know what, I've been really thinking about this place and I think it'd be cool to go check it out. Now, maybe I'm not as motivated as I am about the other places, but I definitely do want to go eventually and go see what's up. So that might be like going to London, maybe going to somewhere in the Caribbean, checking out different countries in Africa, Nigeria, Tanzania, South Africa, just different things that you can look into. But the thing is, you should make steps towards those places of very high interest and make sure that you're taking a step to show that you're really serious about it. So again, I said I won't get too technical on this, but we all know the things that you probably need to have lined up if you're going to be flying, particularly in a certain countries. Now in Canada and Mexico, it's a little bit different usually. Sometimes you can just have like an enhanced license. But and then of course, if you're traveling by boat, it's a little different. But let's just say, as general rule of thumb, we all know that having a passport, if you're going to be doing any sort of travel, is just an overall good idea. But then, of course, we want to probably try to set aside some money, maybe like $100, $200 a month, so that the trip becomes more real to us, so that we know within the next, 6 months to 12 months or a year and a half, etc., that we have an actual fund to go and visit that place or a couple of those places. And then in the interim, you might just go ahead and make a big leap and just go ahead and purchase a plane ticket and get it knocked out. Or whether you do that, or maybe you use like one of these third-party sites where you can package your ticket with a place to stay. But you want to start doing things that move you in the direction of your passionate idea about travel. And the more actions you take, the more real your idea becomes, because you're getting it out of your head and you're actually doing it. Another thing I would also say that's a good thing to keep in mind is just to be flexible about certain destinations and certain travel experiences. So what this means is there might be some places that they haven't really been strongly on your radar, but you know that if somebody just came up to you and said, hey, I got, a round trip ticket to go here, you wouldn't at all reject it, because there's nothing about it that's off-putting. It may just not be somewhere that you just, we're so gung-ho about, rather just trying to go visit. But you know that it's still a place that's worth visiting. So what I would say is this is where you can start adopting traveling as a lifestyle thing. Because say if you see a good deal on, let's say, like a last minute trip, I use a couple of places even, right here in the States. Like if you always wanted to go to New Orleans, or maybe you've already been, but you went once when you were a kid on a family vacation, you never went as an adult, so you want to go back. And you're looking online and you see something, you can maybe take like a 3-day trip, a package deal. Instead of just kind of putting it off and thinking like one day I would like to go back down there, that day might be the day for you to go ahead and do it. Or maybe if you always just wanted to go to Miami or LA or something, and you can find like a real cool deal on that, it might be a good time to snatch it up if you can. Or if you see, man, that's a cool little cruise I can take down to Jamaica or to DR or Dominican Republic, and it'll let you off at maybe like 1 or 2 spots, and it's like a cool package deal. Right time of year, you got the time off. Again, this is a place that wasn't like strongly on your radar, but it's always been a place that you kind of had somewhere in your memory banks dancing around. This is how you can start to kind of build up your travel resume, so that instead of it being something that you want to get around to doing one day, it's something that you actually do. So I just wanted to drop a few thoughts with you, brothers. Again, I want to thank everybody for bearing with me. I'll be sure to make sure I'm keeping in touch with everybody in the comments section, of course, as well as don't ever hesitate to drop me an email. You can always email me at info@theesquireproject.com. As always, brothers, salute to you all. I appreciate your support in advance. And it's peace and love till next time.